Okay, so let's talk a little bit about you, right? So you've talked about your books. Your seventh book came out in December 2021. What's the process of writing these books? Do you have someone to help you? Do you have a ghostwriter? Someone didn't like the word ghostwriter and called it an angel writer, which I really like, actually. But how do you do it? Do you find like a certain part of the day that you just spend an hour every day? What's your process of writing books?
Okay. Well, first I have to say, no, I write all my books by myself. I don't have any writers. I take pride in that because I'm very passionate about it. And it's so funny because my mother always said, someday you're going to write a book. And I was like, what? Okay, I want to write a book. I don't even know how that all happened, but I remember being in graduate school and I would go with my best friend and we would go to the book Barnes and Noble. We were both in a dietetics program and we would go and sit in front of the diet section and think, what are we going to write that's different? And we were like always kind of contemplate. And I didn't know how it would unfold. But my very first book, I was sitting around working. I found this passion for plant-based nutrition. I had a baby and a toddler. Yeah, they were really young. And an agent found my agent found me. This is in 2010. And she reached out to me and said, we are looking for someone to write the complete idiot's guide to vegan nutrition. And would you like to, would you like to do it? And I'm like, yes. I had a website. I was plantbaseddietitian.com way back when. And I had to do a table of contents and a first chapter to submit to the publishers to try to get the job. Well, I was so excited. I'm like, oh, Mom, this is my chance. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this book. And so I did, and I got the job. And I had 2 babies and no help. I didn't even have a babysitter. And I had 6 weeks to write my first book. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Yes. And she threw in at the end, and by the way, 50 recipes. And I went, wait, what? I'm not a chef. I know about physiology. I know about statistics. I know about medicine, medical nutrition therapy. I don't know how to cook. Like, what are you talking about? So I had 6 weeks with the 2 babies to learn how to cook and write recipes and write a whole book all by myself. It was insane. And I had an editor then, they made me hire an editor because it was my first book. I got it done because I'm a stickler for deadlines. Right. It was insane. I was up at 4 a.m., with lots of tea and coffee, and then my babies would cry and I had to take care of the babies. And then back to, as soon as they were napping, I was hustling, but I did it and I got it done. And I had that book change the title to Plant-Based Nutrition because I didn't want to talk about veganism because I didn't want to be, I'm a dietitian, I'm not an ethicist. I didn't want to talk about any of that. Wow. And so, so I did it. And so it's evolved over my 8 books. I'm doing my 8th book now, but it's evolved over time where I learned to, you can't always have the inspiration when you have a deadline. So I've learned that sometimes I just have to sit down. And I was inspired, the guy that, John Robbins, who inspired me to go plant-based from the beginning. I've since, connected with him and had some opportunities to work with him. In fact, I was the executive director of his organization many, many years ago. And we were sitting at an event that we were doing for that organization. And I asked him, how are you so prolific? Because he writes so many books. And he said to me, I'll never forget this. And it always inspires me. He says, those pens, BIC, the BIC pens? I'm like, yeah. He's like, but in a chair. Sit down and just write. And so sometimes brilliant things will pour out. I remember I had a flight to Florida one time and I literally poured out an entire book on my 6-hour flight to Florida from Los Angeles. So sometimes that happens. Most of the time it's okay, so I'll just take a section at a time, or if I'm belaboring something, I'll find something I'm more excited about, or I just start diving into the research. So this last book was my most me book. The last book was my voice and my story and my passion. So it was really easy for me to write, super easy, but it was also 75 more recipes. Again, not a chef. And now I've published hundreds of recipes somehow. I've now fallen in love with cooking, by the way. It's now my happy places to hang out in my kitchen and just start cooking and developing recipes. I don't know how that happened. I guess it's how it happened. So yeah.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's inspiring because writing books has always been a sort of blocker for me personally. And I one of the reasons I started my podcast was because of Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour week. And he just said, just literally sit down for an hour every day and just write. Doesn't matter if it's good words, bad words, you just get words down and that's a starting point. But the other thing that he says is that the editing stage, the sort of review stage is it's not the writing that's important. It's whether your own editing or he asks a lawyer friend of his to sort of review his books before going through it. That whole editorial phase is so important, isn't it?
It's hellacious. Honestly, I hate editing. I'm so not detail oriented in that way. So I'm grateful to have publishers with copy editors. Yeah. But then you have to go through it and go through it and go through it. It's like honestly, by the middle or end of that process, I can't even see the words anymore. Like I'm like, it doesn't look like, like you start to like become like numb to it. It's like, okay, like I don't care. But then I'll tell you this, Mark, when I go back to a book and I find a mistake after it's been through me and a copy editor, I want to die. I'm so angry because I'm such a stickler I'm kind of a perfectionist. So yeah, it's brutal. That part's brutal. I like the creative phase. I don't like the technical phase.
Yeah, absolutely. And your TV appearances, Dr. Oz, you've got a wellness talk show. So how did you sort of pivot into television?
Well, again, I started in television. I was an actress. I did a lot of theater, but I did some TV and film way back when I was like teenager and in my 20s. And then I was sitting there minding my own business. I was thinking I gave that up. I was doing some videos, like I was doing some recipe videos and stuff, just because I was, trying to teach plant-based and inspire people in all the medium and all the media. And I still do. That's like, I'm real passionate about doing videos and stuff like that, because I think it hits people in a different way, than just reading. So I want to hit all the audiences and help as many people as possible. But I was minding my own business at this point. I had my babies and I was making a big dinner for my family. It's like a holiday dinner, and my phone rang. And it was like a New York area code. And I never answer a phone when I don't know the number, but for some reason I answered the phone, and it was a producer from the Dr. Oz show. And they're like, we want to feature you on a thing. And I'm like, oh my God, it was like that. But everything came together right then. I remember literally jumping up and down because how exciting to be on the Dr. Oz show. That was like a huge, huge show. And I left I went to New York. I got to do a 30 minutes, like 3 segments on his show. And it was incredible. And so I did that 3 times, and I was asked to be an expert. So I was an expert on these shows, like Steve Harvey's show and a lot of them. I was just coming on as an expert. And then I had the opportunity to do my own wellness talk show series, which honestly, Mark, was the most exciting opportunity in my life, maybe save for my first book. But I got to go to New York for 6 weeks. I missed my baby's first kindergarten day, which I'll always feel horrible about, but this was a good reason. So I got to live in New York, which is my favorite city, one of my favorite cities, for 6 weeks. And they put me up in this little studio. And every day I got to, take the shuttle and go to my studio. And I had the best producer, who's now my producer of my podcast, Sanford. We've had this incredible relationship for, I don't know, this has been like almost 10 years now. And I got to interview my favorite people and do cooking and fitness and beauty and fashion and interview all these local people in New York. But I had people come to me to be interviewed on my show. It was heaven. It was like 6 weeks of the best thing I ever got to participate in.